yeah, this is the kickoff of Advent. And this first kind of Advent Sunday is really all about hope, which is really cool. And so this kind of beacon that we've got up here should remind us this is a time for us to be able to hope, to restore and renew hope, that God is a God who never fails, that he always keeps his promises, he is who he says he is. And that's really what this whole season is. The word Advent literally means awaiting the arrival of someone important. Right? And so we are eagerly anticipating the arrival of Jesus. And I think that it's also cool that Advent is really it's the base of the name of our church, Adventure. And the word adventure means to set out towards, right, a destination that you long for. So this Advent season and adventure, right, we hold that in common. We are on a journey looking for one who we know can restore hope in our lives. And so maybe for some of us, we've had these kind of lost cause moments or seasons in our lives. I looked in the dictionary this week. Here's how the dictionary defines a lost cause. It defines a lost cause as a person and or a scenario where there is no hope for success nor any possibility of change for the better. The interesting thing is the dictionary puts a picture of a lost cause right next to the definition. It looks like this. Again, let me just remind you of the definition. It's a person or a scenario where there is no hope for success, nor any possibility of change for the better. And I'm a UK fan, right? So this is a hard day for me. But maybe for you, it wasn't a football game. Maybe for you, it was a job, right? You had a job that just wasn't a great fit. Or maybe you have a class. You have a class right now that's really difficult. You don't get along with that teacher. Or maybe in your past you had a boss that maybe you just don't get along with or didn't get along with. Or maybe it's someone that you dated a while back. There's no hope for success, right? You think about this. There's no hope for any kind of positive change. It's best if I just kind of walk away or survive this until someone, maybe including me, gets hurt, right? I'd rather walk away now before there's pain involved. And the thing is, there's all kinds of funny examples, and we can laugh at Kentucky football because it is a joke right now, right? We've tried, right? We've tried in these moments, and we've failed. And maybe we've said to ourselves, this is the last time we ever try something like that again. But what about the lost cause moments and situations that hit closer to home? What are we supposed to do when it seems like maybe the lost cause is our marriage? Again, kind of going back to the stories and data that we collect, right? The data that we see and the stories we tell ourselves based on what we're seeing. Maybe when it comes to our marriages, the stories we tell ourselves sound something like this. There's no hope for success here. Like, I can't hold this together by myself. I think it's too late. We're too far gone. There's no way that this can change for the better. There's no way he can change. There's no way she can change. This is too far gone. We're too late. Or maybe for some of us, it's parenting, where it feels like getting through to our kids, connecting with our kids, feels like a lost cause. And the judgment we form kind of sounds like this. No matter what we do, it doesn't seem like anything is working. And maybe some of you, me, I know I've found myself in this place. I've become the kind of parent that I swore I'd never become. I said the thing that I swore I would never say. Or maybe it's a diagnosis that we didn't expect. And the narrative kind of starts to play, the tapes start to replay on repeat in our minds, right? There's no hope of getting better. The treatments won't work. Sometimes the lost causes in our situations and our circumstances, right? But sometimes the lost causes in our lives, it's someone, not something. And maybe for some of us, we've started to kind of buy into this story that we are the lost cause. And so the stories we start to share sound like this. Don't waste your hopes on someone like me. I'm never going to get out of this mess that I've made for myself. I'm never going to get better. I'm never going to figure this out. I'm not enough. I'll never be enough. I'm the lost cause. And if you play this out, when everything around us starts to feel like a lost cause, when we maybe even personally start to begin to believe that we are a lost cause, it's only a matter of time before God, our faith and our trust and our confidence in him and living by what he says to do, right? That our faithfulness, living the way he says to live, all of that also begins to seem like a lost cause. A relationship with God feels out of reach. Right? There's no way he would love someone like me. There's no way he would want someone like me trying to love him back. No matter how hard I try, I always screw this up. So why even try discipleship? Why even try to live the way that God wants me to live? Yes, I know Jesus says that it's an abundant life. And yes, I know Jesus says it's open to all, but I don't feel like that includes me. So what are we supposed to do when these kind of lost cause narratives and stories and judgments about ourselves, about our situations, about people in our lives, about God even start to feel true? If you got your Bible or your Bible app with you or around you, go ahead and open up to Ruth chapter 1. We've got free Bibles in the back. If you don't have a Bible in your house, you don't have a Bible at home, you don't own a Bible, we'd love for you to take one today. Go grab one and take that home. That's going to be yours, right? We'd love for you to have a Bible. So Ruth's about, a little more than a third of the way through your Bible. It's in the Old Testament. One thing we've been saying throughout this whole series, The Unusual Suspects, is that when it comes to the kind of stories that we tell ourselves, right, these narratives that we buy into and believe, that we use to kind of make sense of the world around us, the judgments that we form about ourselves, about others, and even God, here's the truth. Bible people are just people. They're like us. People in the Bible struggle with the same kind of stories and narratives and judgments that we struggle with. They deal with the same kind of fear and doubt and questions that we deal with. And we're about to see how this whole lost cause situation and how lost cause people, how those things play out in the book of Ruth. Chapter 1, we're going to pick up in verse 1. Here's what it says. In the days when the judges ruled in Israel, a severe famine came on the land. Just pause right here. Because this is the cool thing. When we read the Bible, there's a couple things we need to remember. The Bible was written for us, but it wasn't written to us. Right? The Bible was actually written to an ancient Near East audience, right? And so they would have understood that in this first verse, there's a whole lot of little information, these little details that will help us get a better handle on what's happening here, right? We're given a crucial detail that really kind of paints a clear picture of a lost cause situation, that this whole story involving someone named Ruth and Naomi and another guy named Boaz, right? This whole thing is taking place within this pretty severe lost cause scenario. The last verse in the book of Judges leads into the first verse in the book of Ruth, and it sets the tone for what we're about to unpack. And so when it says the judges were in charge of Israel, when the judges were ruling Israel, when they were overseeing Israel, here's what was happening during that time. Look at the last verse in Judges. Just flip back one page. It says this, 21:25 says, in those days Israel had no king, and so all the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes. So the first verse of Ruth and the last verse of Judges clue us in on what's happening, the kind of situation and scenario that people are living in the midst of. Nobody's in charge. Nobody is pointing people towards the right way to live. No one is kind of setting guardrails for the way society is supposed to function. It really and truly is every person for themselves. So the mindset, right, that people operated under was like this. You do whatever you think is right and best for you. I'm going to do whatever I think is right and best for me. And I don't care if what I think is right and best goes against what you think is right or best. That doesn't matter. I don't really care if what I think is right and best goes against what God says is right, best, or true. The only thing that matters is if I think it's best for me. And that's kind of hard to imagine, right? So let me just kind of paint an imaginary scenario for you. Imagine that as we're here in church, like we all get one of those like alert text messages that just make you like sit up like you've been electrocuted. You know what I'm talking about? Like they're awful. It's a terrible noise. Imagine we get those. Like everybody's phone starts to go off and they just say, listen, the state of Kentucky, we've done away with all traffic laws. There's no more traffic laws. You can kind of drive however you want, wherever you want, whatever you want, right? You do whatever you think is right, best, and true, right? Imagine the Gene Snyder. It's already a lawless place, right? Right? Imagine the Watterson at 5 o'clock, right? Again, you have to survive the Watterson. I remember driving on the Watterson at 16 years old with my driver's ed teacher, and I'm trying to obey the speed limit on the Watterson. It's 55, if you didn't know that. And he's going, listen, Brad, if you don't go 70 here, you're going to kill us all, right? Like even my driver's ed teacher was like, break the law right now. It matters. That's the only way we're going to get through this. Imagine that. I mean, it would be chaos if you just said, listen, you can go get in your car and do whatever you want. You can drive however you want, pick the side of the road, or if you don't want to drive on a road, that's fine. Do whatever. It would be chaos, and lots of people would get hurt. That's kind of what life was like in Israel. No one was in charge. You just kind of did whatever you wanted, whatever you thought was right, best, true, and good for you. That's what you did, and it didn't matter how that affected anybody else. And you really didn't care if God had an opinion on it or not. And if that wasn't bad enough, we also learned that there's a severe famine in the land, which means there's no food, there's no crops, there's no resources. Everyone is going hungry. That's what we're getting ready to airdrop into. So let's jump back in. It says, so a man from Bethlehem in Judah left his home and went to live in the country of Moab. Now Moab, if you want to just circle that in your Bible, maybe drive a little note next to that. Moab were kind of the Moabites were the sworn mortal enemies of the people of Israel. And that's going to matter here in just a minute, right? So this guy from Bethlehem in Judah, he is moving his family to Moab, the enemies of Israel. He's taking his wife and his 2 sons with him. It says the man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi, and their 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. And they were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. And when they reached Moab, they settled there. So in the midst of all of this chaos, we find Elimelech and Naomi. And they've kind of looked around and surveyed the scenario and the situation, and they've had it, right? They're packing up their family. They're moving to another country. They're moving to Moab. They look at this whole situation, and like many of us would do, based on the data, based on what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we experience, based on our past, our present, and our future, the story that they begin to tell themselves, the narrative that they believe, and the judgment that they come to about Israel is this whole thing is a lost cause. There's little hope of success. There's no way this thing changes for the better. We need to get out of here. We're moving to Moab, which again is less of a move and more of a statement. They're not just moving to a place that they feel like is better. They're trying to make a statement in this whole process. See, in this time, in this culture, when you left your home country and moved into a foreign country, it required you to cut ties with any family you left behind. It required that you cut ties with the culture that you grew up in, with your faith, with whoever or whatever your faith was built on, whoever or whatever you worship, you have to cut ties. And the reason for that is they required you to then create all new ties with the people, the culture, the faith, and whoever or whatever they worshiped in that new place, whatever faith or faithfulness looked like in the new place that you were moving into, you had to take that on as your own. And like we said, they're moving to Moab, the sworn mortal enemy of the people of Israel. And so what Elimelech and Naomi are really saying is this: life in Israel is such a lost cause, we'd rather cut ties with everything that we know and become like the enemy. We would rather become the enemy to our own people than stay with our own people. And as much as we would look at that and go, well, we kind of want to throw stones at that, right? Like, come on, guys, really that? As much as we want to throw stones at Elimelech and Naomi, we can't, because typically we do the same thing, right? We have such a huge aversion to pain and the potential of pain that when things actually hurt, or it seems like we might get hurt, what we do is we start looking for the quickest and easiest way to cut ties and get out. Even if the only way out is in the opposite direction of where we feel like God wants us to go. Yeah, I know God said to do this. I know God wants me to live this way, but that way seems like it's going to hurt. This seems painful, so I want to go the other way, God. Even if that means looking at you going, listen, I think I can do this whole life thing better than you. That seems like it's going to hurt. I'm going the other way. I know you want me to go that way, but I'm going in the opposite direction. See, when we get a sense that a situation that we're in, or that maybe someone that we're dealing with could end up being a lost cause, no success, right? No hope for the better, we start looking for ways out. Even if that means we cut ties with everyone and everything, and we compromise everything about our lives. I mean, really, why go down with the ship if you don't have to? I mean, jump to the nearest lifeboat, even if that means you have to turn your back on everything you've ever stood for and everything and everyone you've ever been connected to. Elimelech and Naomi, they weren't just bailing on what seemed like a bad situation. They were openly declaring that everything happening in and around their lives was a lost cause, and that included their land, their family, their culture, and their God. And as we've been saying throughout this series, here's what happens. When we buy and believe the wrong kinds of stories and narratives and judgments about ourselves, or about the situations that we find ourselves in, or maybe even who we are in God's eyes, here's where that leads. That almost always leads to us buying and believing the wrong kinds of stories, narratives, and judgments about God. and what he can do in the midst of our situations and who he really is. See, for Elimelech and Naomi, everything around them seemed like a lost cause, which led them to believe that God was a lost cause. And so they assumed they were better off kind of cutting ties and detaching from all of it, including God. Walk away from God, because over there it seems better. If that meant that they could avoid the risk and the potential pain of becoming lost causes themselves, they were willing to walk away from everything. So let's pick back up in verse 3. It says this, then Elimelech died. So they moved into Moab. And then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. And so Naomi's left with her 2 sons. Then they married Moabite women. One married a woman named Orpah, and the other married a woman named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both their boys die. And this left Naomi alone. The word alone in Hebrew means she's a leftover or a broken piece. The word alone means shard or remnant. This thing was whole at one point. It got smashed into 1,000 pieces, and this is one of the only pieces left over. She was just a leftover piece, a broken piece of something that was once whole without her 2 sons and her husband. See, this lost cause situation, it just shifted from kind of situation and circumstance, and now it's personal. The lost cause in this story is no longer something, but now it's a someone. See, in this time, in this culture, everything kind of regarding the social standing and security of a family was tied to the men in the family. The only people that were really able to provide and protect and even publicly advocate on behalf of your family were the guys in your family. And so for Naomi, when Elimelech died, her husband, it put her in danger. She was now at risk of having no advocate, no protector. But you know what? She still had her 2 sons to give her family some form of social, kind of societal representation, but then both her boys die. And now Naomi is in a lost cause situation. She's a foreigner in a foreign land, and she's just lost every bit of standing, security, and rights in that culture. There's no one to advocate for her. There's no one to protect her. There's no one to provide for her. Naomi is now a lost cause in a lost cause situation. Culturally, in this moment, Naomi would have been worth less than 0. And there's really no chance of it getting better. This is her worst nightmare. I mean, you got to think, she was thinking, I thought we were trying to get away from a lost cause situation. That's what we were trying to avoid. That's why we made this move over into Moab. And now, not only am I in a lost cause, I am a lost cause. And there's a Hebrew word for this type of people. It's a word that we've talked about. It's a word that we've shared here at Adventure. It's the word Anoim. It's a class of people. They were considered to be worthless. Right? The word literally means human garbage. They were thought of, they were sought after, they were seen as kind of the kind of thing that you would scrape off the bottom of your shoe. That's what they're worth. You have no value. You're a lost cause. And the thing about this culture was you were told have nothing to do with the Anoim. Right? Because if you associate with that kind of people, if you connect your life to those people, you take on their status. So you better not get too close. If you get too close, you run the risk of becoming a lost cause just like them. Everything that's true about them and their situation, if you associate with them, will become true about you and your situation. Don't associate with human garbage unless you want to become human garbage. So let's pick up in verse 7, chapter 1. It says, with her 2 daughters-in-law, Naomi, she set out from the place where she'd been living, and she took the road that would lead them back to Judah. So here's what's happening. Naomi, in the midst of this whole deal, right, she decides to pack it up and move back home. Because she'd heard that this famine that was causing everyone to go hungry, that was limiting resources, that famine was over. And so she thought in her brain, right, there's a chance of survival. It's a low chance. It's a low chance back home, but at least there's some chance. But at the same time, here's what she knew. She knew all that was waiting for her back home was shame. I mean, think about it. She cut ties with everybody and everything back home. She didn't just move in with the enemy, she became the enemy. And now she's returning back home After spending around 10 or so years living in enemy territory, she's coming back with this label that says, Anoim, you're trash. So you can kind of imagine the reception that she was expecting to get wasn't going to be the warmest. I mean, as she pulls back into town, it's not like, oh, Naomi, been a while, haven't seen you. It was this. You bailed on things when things got hard, and now that they're better for us and harder for you, you want to try to come back here? Who do you think you are? Do you expect us to care for you? Do you expect us to care about you after everything that you've done? See, that Anoim tag wasn't going away when she got home. In fact, it was probably going to be worse. Not only was she a throwaway person, but she was also someone who betrayed everything and everyone in the place that she was trying to move back into. And Naomi knows this. She knows what's waiting for her. She knows that it's not going to get better. In fact, it's probably going to get worse. So here's what she does. It says this, but on the way, Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, go back to your mother's homes, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with the security of another marriage. Like, girls, don't stay with me. Go back home. Go get remarried. And then she kissed them goodbye, and they all broke down and wept. And then they look at her, and they say, no, we want to go with you to your people. And here's the thing. They don't really want to. They were culturally obligated to. Kind of part of that family contract was you stick together with your family. So really, they're not saying we really want to go back to where you're from, where we're the enemy. We want to live out the rest of our days with you, the lost. They're not saying, they're saying, listen, we have to go with you. It's not we get to go, we have to go with you. And Naomi said, well, why? I mean, can I still give birth to other sons who will grow up to be your husbands? She said, no, like go back to your parents' homes. I'm too old to get married again. And even if it were possible, even if I got married right now tonight and I were to bear sons, are you going to wait for those sons to grow up and you're going to refuse to marry anyone else? She said, that's crazy. And then she says this, things are far more bitter for me than they are for you. For the Lord himself has raised his fists against me. See, Naomi knows how things work. She knows I'm an Anoim, and if you stay with me, you're going to be an Anoim. Don't waste your life. Don't waste your future. Don't waste your hopes and dreams on a lost cause like me. There's no hope for you as long as you're with me. This will not get better. You will not succeed. If you stay with me, you'll become a lost cause too. And then Naomi says this, things are far more bitter for me than they are for you. Again, if you got your Bible or Bible app, just circle, highlight that, maybe draw a little note next to it. The word bitter in Hebrew means this. It means unusable and empty. I'm unusable. I have no use. I have no value, and I am empty. There's nothing left to give. See, this moment in the story kind of gives us insight into the kind of stories and narratives and judgments that Naomi is now believing about herself. The story she's telling herself is that she is of no use. She is of no value. She has nothing to offer. And the person behind all of it is God. That's the story she's telling herself. God did this to me. And we're about to see that she even goes one step further and she changes her name from Naomi to Mara. Look down in verse 20. She says, don't call me Naomi. Instead, call me Mara. For the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me home empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has caused me to suffer and the Almighty has sent such tragedy upon me? The name Mara in Hebrew means bitter, empty, and unusable. For Naomi, empty wasn't just a feeling, it was her identity. In her heart and her mind and her soul, unusable was now her defining characteristic. She wasn't saying, hey, I feel unusable and empty. She was saying, I am unusable and empty. I am Mara, bitter. Now, before we move on, I need us to catch something, right? Don't miss this. This is one of those moments. Naomi gets so caught up in believing and buying the wrong kinds of stories and narratives and judgments about herself and about her situations that she starts copying and pasting those things onto God. She says, the reason that I'm empty and unusable is because God is mad at me. He did this. I'm sure she was thinking, like, how did I get myself into this mess? And I'm sure she landed at this place and going, you know what? Well, I cut ties with him. And right now he's getting even. God is causing me to suffer. He's raised his fists against me. He has made my life very bitter. He has brought all of this tragedy on me. You ever been there? You ever been in that space? Where after beating up yourself and maybe those around you, you turn your face to God. You stick your finger in his chest. Right? When those situations, the stories we tell ourselves, they lead us to believe that we're a lost cause in a lost cause situation. We put our fingers in God's chest and we blame him for all of it. And what happens here in this moment and what happens in our lives is we put words in God's mouth that he never would say. We accuse God of doing things that he'd never do. And we begin to believe that he's someone he really isn't. We talked about this a little bit last week. That in the painful situations, God is not causing our pain. God does not choose or want to see us suffer. There are times in our lives that he will allow us to experience pain and suffering, but it's not because he wants to see us hurt. In that moment, God is less afraid of what pain will do to us because he's more confident in his ability to get us through it. He's more confident in his faithfulness to never leave us. And he's confident in his ability to use the pain in our lives to grow us and to advance his kingdom, right? So, but in Naomi's eyes, she can't see that. Like for many of us, when we're in those situations where we just hurt, whether it's grief over a loss, or it's pain over unexpected news. This didn't go the way I thought it would. She can't see that in this moment. Like so many of us, what's right in front of us is the hurt. That's all she sees. And so she begins to believe she's toxic, that she's poisonous, that she's radioactive. Don't get anywhere near me, right? Not only because she's in a lost cause situation, but also because she's a lost cause, and it's like triple down. I'm in a lost cause situation, and I'm a lost cause. Why? Because God has done this to me. And so she looks at her daughters-in-law and she gives them an out. She says, listen, I know the rules. I know what you're supposed to do. I know culture says you have to stay with me, but I'm telling you, you don't have to do that. And Orpah takes it. She takes the out. Like, okay, thanks. I really appreciate that. Going back home. But Ruth doesn't. Verse 16 says this, Ruth replied, don't ask me to leave you. Don't ask me to turn back. Wherever you go, I go. Wherever you live, I live. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die. And there I'll be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. And then when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined, the Bible says, she said nothing more. Now, just so we're 100% clear, here's what Ruth is facing in making this choice. In following and staying with Naomi, her mother-in-law, Ruth has to now cut ties with her family. She has to cut ties with her culture, her home, her faith, whatever her faith was built on. She has to let all of that go, and she's knowingly in this moment hitching her life to an Anawim, which makes her an Anawim, which means that she will be culturally less than zero. One author writes this, Ruth's commitment to Naomi includes sharing every aspect of her situations and her circumstances, whatever they might be, for the rest of her life. And I got thinking about this week as I was working, studying, and writing some things for today. And this isn't in my notes. I just thought about this morning on my way in. It's like could I do that? Could I connect my life? Would I be willing to connect my life to someone knowing that I would share in their suffering, that their situation would become my situation? That there's little chance of success and there's really no hope for things getting better. Could I do that? Would I be more like Ruth in that moment? I'd like to think I could, but here's the thing. I think I'd probably be more like the other daughter-in-law. Oh, you're giving me an out? Okay, I think I'll take it. What about you? Where would you land? Would you stay connected to someone knowing, hey, where I go, you go, whatever happens to you happens to me? Whatever your situation is, that'll be my situation. If we're lost causes, at least we'll be there together, right? Would you be Ruth or would you be Orpah in this situation? Would you take the out or would you stay connected? I got really convicted Because I think as much as I would like to think I would stay connected, there's part of me that knows, I'd be looking for that out. Now, I wish we had more time to talk through every aspect of this story, but we don't. Here's what I will say. Ruth is only 4 chapters. So like if you went home today, you could knock this out in just a handful of minutes, right? Maybe even take that as a challenge. This afternoon, go home and read the book of Ruth. But here's kind of the spoiler alert Cliff Notes version. You already know the end before you start. This is good, right? Back in Bethlehem, Naomi, who now goes by Mara, bitter, empty, and unusable, she and Ruth, they're barely scraping by. In fact, the only way that they can put food on the table is Ruth, who's younger, has to go out into the grain fields where the harvesters are harvesting the barley, right? And she has to pick up the stuff that they dropped or they left behind. That's all she gets. Whatever gets dropped, whatever gets left behind, you can get from that. It's called gleaning. Gleaning is like the ancient equivalent of dumpster diving, right? That's kind of what you want to think, right? It's the only option for an Anawim, right? That's the only thing they have. They can't go and get food for themselves. They have to pick up whatever gets dropped, left behind, or whatever's left over. But it just so happens that Ruth is gleaning in a field owned by a guy named Boaz, who notices her. Who's the new girl, right? Who's that out there gleaning in my field? It's Ruth. It's Ruth, right? Ruth tells Naomi, hey, this guy named Boaz, he noticed me. He actually gave me more food. And Naomi kind of puts 2 and 2 together and realizes like, well, Boaz is a distant relative of my husband, right, who passed away. Boaz is what's called a kinsman redeemer or a guardian redeemer. He's a relative of Elimelech's. And the Jewish law in this time, here's the roles and responsibilities of a guardsman redeemer or a guardian redeemer or a kinsman redeemer were this. It was avenging the death of a murdered relative. That was your responsibility. Marrying the childless widow of a dead brother, buying back family land that had been sold, buying back a family member that had been sold into slavery, looking after helpless or needy family members, right? That was kind of the role of a kinsman redeemer or guardian redeemer, someone who was related to the men in your family. But here's the deal. When that happens, when that kinsman redeemer or guardian redeemer steps forward and commits their resources and their lives to making things right again, the Anawim status goes away. Everything gets restored. Everything gets redeemed. Hence why they're called kinsman or guardian redeemers. But they have to be willing to do that. It's their choice. I mean, do I want to put my resources? Is trying to redeem that lost cause, is it worth my time, my energy, my effort, my attention, my money? Do I have what it takes to be able to buy them out of this situation, to get them out of this situation? Or is that too much of an investment? Which again, that's an out. You can choose. No, I don't really think so. I don't have enough. I don't have the resources. Don't want to deal with that. But when you start to zoom out, in this case, from this lost cause situation and circumstance, you can see what God is really up to here. See, Ruth, she wouldn't or she couldn't have known what field she was in, right? She wasn't originally from this area like Naomi was. Ruth was just going to try to find some food because they were starving to death. She would not have known about this culture's kinsman redeemer or guardian redeemer laws. She grew up in another culture under different laws, and yet it's all starting to unfold because God's working behind the scenes. This is why I say often, I don't believe in coincidences. This wasn't a coincidence that Ruth just happened to be in Boaz's field. It wasn't a coincidence that the time that she was out in Boaz's field that he was actually home and went, hey, who's the new girl? It wasn't a coincidence that he noticed her. Not a coincidence that he's a distant relative of Elimelech, Naomi's husband that passed away. God knew what he was doing. Now you fast forward to chapter 4. They put all of this together. And Boaz has to go out and actually choose to be the kinsman and guardian redeemer, because here's what he found out. In the process of them putting this together and Boaz saying, listen, I'm willing to put forth the resources, the time, the energy, the money, the attention, whatever it takes to get you all out of this situation. It might cost me everything, but I'm willing to do that. But then Boaz finds out there's actually someone who's a closer relative than me. So actually it has to go to him first. And so he goes out and kind of deals with that and says, listen, here's what's happening. You're the kinsman redeemer. You're a closer relative than I am. Are you willing to put forth the money, the time, the attention, the effort, the energy, all of that into getting them out of this mess? And that guy says, no way. I don't want that. So Boaz steps forward and says, well, then I'll do it. And he goes out where the elders of the village are, and he speaks to them. It says this, starting in verse 9, chapter 4, verse 9. It says, then Boaz said to the elders and to the crowd standing around, you are witnesses that today I've bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech and Chilion and Mahlon. And with the land, I've actually acquired Ruth, the Moabite widow of Mahlon, to be my wife. Again, part of being the kinsman redeemer is you have to associate yourself with lost causes and broken people that you've been told your whole life, don't do that. It's a risk. This is not just an open and shut, hey, this is all going to work out. There's risk involved. So I'm not just I'm not just spending my resources to buy what's theirs. I'm also taking this woman to be my wife. I'm connecting my life to the life of an Anawim, because this way she'll be able to carry on their family name. And she'll be able to inherit the family property in his hometown. You are witnesses today, he says. Now here's just a tip when you're studying the Bible. Anytime you see something get repeated, you want to dial into that a little bit. See, Boaz twice says, you are all witnesses. See, the word for witness means testimony, but it's not a noun, it's a verb. He's not just pointing to a person that saw this whole thing unfold or the story of the events that unfolded. He's saying, you're all witnesses. It means this: you must share this story. He's inviting them to share the story, to be the ones that tell the story. He's saying this: you are now witnesses, means you're now the storytellers of what happened today. They were witnesses more than just to a real estate deal, right? Don't miss this. They were witnesses to more than just kind of the civil union. They were witnesses to something more than someone fulfilling a legal obligation within their family. Here's what they were witnesses to. They were witnesses to a man loving an outcast and redeeming her and restoring her and bringing her into a relationship with himself. And one author I read this week says it like this: those who were out there had to wonder at this point, if a man could do this, then could God do it also? Could God find a way to love all the outcasts and disqualified people in the world, redeem them, restore them, and bring them all into a relationship with himself? If a man could do this, could God? Could he do the same thing? Would God be willing to do that? Would God be willing to pay that high of a price? Would he be willing to associate himself with people like us? Would he be willing to step into and take on our situation? See, when it comes to the unusual suspects, right, it's a bonus day. There's not just one, there's three: Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz. Some of us, we resonate with Naomi because our lives have been full of unmet expectations and lost cause situations. And maybe those situations have become personal and we feel empty and unusable. But sometimes the story you never wanted becomes the place where God can begin his redemptive work. Sometimes emptiness isn't the end of your story, it's the space where God can begin a new one. And while pain and grief and loss can cloud our view of God and his goodness, it doesn't cancel his presence. Just because you can't see his goodness in that moment doesn't mean it's not there. Maybe for some of us, we find hope in someone like Ruth. We think, you know what, God always works to heal the hearts of those who believe and buy into the story that they're a lost cause through people who simply refuse to walk away. Ruth committed to Naomi even though there was no guarantee that things were going to work out for her. So again, I'd ask you this question: can you do that? Are you willing to be committed or maybe renew a commitment to someone who in your life who appears to be a lost cause? You've written them off, you and everybody else. What would it be like if you called them up today? Could you hang in? Could you not bail? Could you not run away and look for the nearest exit out of these situations and stay in it? Sometimes God's mercy shows up wrapped in another person's loyalty. Could that be you? Or maybe we find hope in someone like Boaz. We see a reflection of God redeeming what seems beyond repair. Here's the cool thing. In the book of Ruth, similar to the book of Esther that never mentions God by name, yet he's working behind the scenes the whole time, right? In the book of Ruth, no one ever prays. Like no one ever talks to God in the book of Ruth. Yet the word redeem shows up 23 times in just 4 chapters. And the Hebrew word for redeem means to repurpose. Like us, Naomi and Ruth, they can't change their choices. Maybe some of us in the room, we can't go back and undo our past. We cannot erase the consequences of our lives. But here's what God can do. He can take every bit of those consequences, every bit of that past, and he can redeem it. He can repurpose it because he's that good. There's no such thing as a lost cause when God's involved. And like we said, those people were asking themselves in that moment, you think, could God do this? If a man like Boaz can do this, do you think God can do this? Here's a cool story. If it just stopped at, when God's involved, no one's a lost cause. If that was the takeaway for today, that would be enough. But that's not where the book of Ruth ends. The book of Ruth ends with a genealogy, which is a family tree. And here's what we learn. We learn that Naomi was the mother-in-law of Ruth. Ruth had a son named Obed, who had a son named Jesse, who had a son named David, who went on to be the king of Israel. But that's not all. You fast forward about 40 generations from David, and we find a guy named Joseph who was engaged to a girl named Mary, who were the earth parents of Jesus. Naomi and Ruth went from Anoim, worthless, empty, unusable, no value, to being in the family tree of Jesus. Not only is God willing to step into our situations and circumstances, not only is God willing to pay the highest cost to buy us out of the mess that we're in, he's actually willing to do that through broken people. An unredeemable situation gets repurposed and restored. God's goodness found a way to bring love to all of the outcasts and all of the disqualified people in this world through outcasts and disqualified people. Like the song we sang, you're the only one that can do that. You're the only one who can. God redeems them, restores them, and brings them into a relationship with himself through Jesus. That's what's on the table for us today. So today, this Sunday, the first Sunday of Advent, the Sunday of hope, when we open this season looking for and awaiting the arrival of Jesus, there is hope for us today, church. There is no such thing as a lost cause when God gets involved. No one is too broken, too messy, or too far gone. He is willing to seek us out and find us in our lostness. He is willing to pay the price, the life of his own son, to buy us back out of the mess that sin has entrapped us in, to redeem us, to repurpose us, to restore us. All of the pain in your past can be repurposed to advance his kingdom now in your life in the present and in the lives of others going forward. Who else can do that but God? So in this time, we're going to celebrate communion, which again is the moment, that's the time that we remember the sacrifice that Jesus made for us on the cross. So our ushers are going to come forward. They're going to pass the plates, and in this, their cups, and in that cup there's a little cracker, and then there's a cup of juice. That cracker represents the body of Jesus that was broken for us. You remember how the Bible described Naomi as kind of the leftover piece or a broken piece of a whole or a shard? Jesus' body was shattered for us. And all of his blood was poured out for us. And in doing so, he broke the power of sin and death. When they buried him in a tomb, and he walked out 3 days later, he left sin and death in the grave. Jesus put death to death. It no longer has a hold on us. It no longer has to be what we fear. Which means if we don't fear death, then we don't have to be afraid of attaching our lives to people that the world has written off as a lost cause. That we, those who look and feel and sound like Jesus, Christians, the word Christian means little Christ, imitator of Christ, can do the same thing. We can be willing to step in and bring hope to the lives of those who believe the narratives and stories that they're a lost cause, that they are empty and unusable, they have no value, because the world has told them that. We can be the reflection and image of God like Boaz was, that says, I'm willing to invest my life in you, even if it costs me everything. For the sake of them getting in the same room with Jesus to hear that God actually still loves them. So today, as you take communion, just thank Jesus for that. That you are loved, that you are not disqualified. He qualifies you. That you are not a lost cause, that your life is not too broken or too messy. He meets you where you are, as you are, but he never leaves you there. He invites you into this journey of relationship with him. So I'm going to pray, and in this time as we worship, if you need prayer, I'd love to meet you up front. You can meet me down here. Jean's in the back. She's a part of our prayer team. She'd love to pray for you as well. If today you want to accept Christ, if you've never accepted Christ and invited him into your life, we would love to chat with you. If you want to join our church, you can meet me here, or we can talk in the back about all of that after service. But I'm going to pray, and then we're going to worship together. Jesus.